Hello, so this is the 2024 CMU Gen Cyber workshop all about web exploitation and web attacks in general. So within this workshop, you're going to learn a little bit about web exploitation, what it is, how it's done, and how we prevent it, and some things we should think about while we're still roaming the internet, and why we should be thinking about it while roaming the internet. So let's get started. So in order to start with web exploitation, we need to understand what it is. What is a web exploitation? Why should I know what an exploitation should be? So web exploitations can actually be further divided. There actually needs to be further background information in order to understand the full definition. One of the background information we need to know is understanding what a website is. A website is essentially a set of pages that a person can interact with. So let's think back to like google.com or cmu.edu or picoctf.com and other websites like those. Whenever we think of the very basics of this website, we can think of that coding languages, those things that are actually building the website, putting things on the screen, making things move around, making us go to different pages on the website. And these coding languages are normally HTML, some version of JavaScript, and CSS. And each of them have a basic function in order to complete for our website. But even the basic and most basic of websites, it's not enough. Whenever we think of youtube.com, for instance, and we want to upload a video or download a video or play a video or comment and so on and so forth, there's a lot of things that has to go on in the back end that coding languages, yes, like HTML, JavaScript, and CSS can help, but there needs to be more code, and more code means more complexity. And some of this code can be made by us, our developers, our in-house developers from scratch, obviously. Some of this code actually helps us maintain database systems. This database houses information about the user, like login information, your username or password, your credit card information if you're paying for a streaming service like Netflix or YouTube Premium, or some websites actually incorporate third-party services in order to make that code work and that complexity not in-house or not on a separate server, but actually to someone else because they know how to do it. So now we understand, okay, so a website can get pretty complicated. We can utilize a lot of different features, and we can actually incorporate so many things about a website and make it very complex. But with complexity comes vulnerabilities or weaknesses within the code. And these weaknesses can come from ourselves, the people that made the code, from the third-party services, from the way we set up our databases and how we interact with them. So all of these can be weaknesses, at one point a weakness within our code. And web exploitation is that we are going to exploit these vulnerabilities or these weaknesses within our website in order to accomplish usually one of these three things, which is one, taking control of the application in general, to take information from the application, like login information, for instance, or three, use the application in order to take advantage of other systems on the internet. And all three of them, as I've said, well, now I'm saying are very bad, and we don't want this whatsoever, but knowing helps us understand sort of the security measures that we try to incorporate within our website, and also help us have more of a realistic understanding of the internet and websites in general. So now, okay, so we know what web exploitation is. We know like the general, like what happens when there is a web exploitation. What is the outcome of someone doing a web exploitation? But still, like, why do I need to know that? It shouldn't be that important, right? Well, since going on the internet and interacting with websites have become such an integral part of our society, it's not only us that use these websites for good or for just general purposes know that, but also attackers or malicious users actually realize that and also take advantage, are the ones that usually start doing this web exploitation in order to take advantage of our unrealized amount of trust we have within these websites, and give you some perspective and some numbers essentially of why this is super important. Is that 26% of breaches or leaks of information from of critical information usually are from web application based services. So youtube.com, for instance, or your insurance company or your banking system. 26% of breaches entirely come from web application based ones. So this becomes the second most common attack pattern that we see on the internet or in general in real life. Okay, so there's a lot of breaches, a lot of leak of information. So what? It's only 26%. It should not be big in the grand scheme of things. Well, no. Websites actually have 94 attacks a day. 94. So when we think about it, that's a lot of work that people are doing in order to exploit these websites in order to achieve a common purpose. And then, okay, so websites have 94 attacks a day. Well, not all of them work. Why should I care? Well, since the internet has become such an integral part of our day-to-day lives, let's think about the websites we interact. 12.8 million websites are infected with malware. And when I say infected with malware, it's with it's negative in the sense of malware is actually something infectious, something like a disease. It's not really great. It's not really safe for us, for our web, or for our computers, for the website in general. And usually search engines do a job. One of the search engine's job is to make sure that these infected malware websites are actually not viewable to users that are just looking to get a service done or to accomplish a goal within our websites. But there are leaks. It's not 100% preventable. As we can see here, 88% of these websites that are infected with malware are not blacklisted by our search engines. And that's 12.8 million websites we have here, and 88% of them we are able to still interact with and go on the page and be infected with malware. So that gives some importance to why web exploitation needs to be learned and understood. So, okay, we understand what web exploitation is. Okay, we understand the gravity of the situation, but what does exploitation mean? What does it violate within our system, within our website? Well, now we can go back to the basics. We think of our CIA triad, our confidentiality, our integrity, our availability. And we add web exploitation on those three, and web exploitations actually can affect all three of them. It can take away confidentiality. So information you wish to not disclose to other parties on the internet, well, attackers that use web exploits can actually get that information now. Integrity, that accuracy, the completeness of that website, to make sure that website only does one thing and one thing only. Well, now we can't trust that anymore because web exploits can actually alter websites and alter the purpose of the website. So now it's not integrity anymore. Well, that availability, some web attacks that we can do actually limits our access to those services, which is something that within computer science and within our systems, that triad, we try to maintain these pillars to make sure that when a user goes on a website, they can be confident that these CIA triads is held true with our websites. But web exploits sort of do the opposite and takes away these pillars. So I'm going to go into a couple of attacks you can do. This page is basically me saying, don't do these attacks unless you're allowed to do these attacks. Don't go on a random website and try them, because that's not nice, one, and two, that can lead to a lot of very horrible outcomes, which we will not get into. So this is my warning for you. Don't do this at home. So we're going to go into a couple of attacks, a couple of web exploits that we can actually do. That is actually very common practice that attackers do, or malicious people do on the internet. One of these attacks is called an IDOR attack, which is the insecure direct object reference. So a lot of fancy terms I'm about to say here, but essentially what happens is that this web exploit is actually modifying or accessing URLs or parameters within our URLs in order to access a page or information that they're not originally supposed to. So what does it mean that they're accessing information or a page that they're not supposed to? Well, it means a couple things. One, the website doesn't have correctly implemented access control checks. Basically, these checks is the website thinking to itself, is this user allowed to do this? Are they allowed to access this information? And if the user is not allowed to do this, but still is able to do this, that means that these checks are either not implemented within the website, it doesn't exist, or does exist within the website, but doesn't do what it's supposed to do. So this is either misconfiguration or misimplementation. So an example of this, as you can see on the right of the slideshow, is we have a website called example.org. And we see within the URL that they have a way to load your homepage, your user homepage, which is /users / an ID. So what if I change the ID from 123, which could be me, could be another user, to 124? Does that allow me actually access the homepage of another user? And if it is, well, now that's a little concerning because I'm not that user anymore. And now I'm ruining that confidentiality, that information that one homepage has for that certain user can be now viewable to another person. And some ways that we can prevent this IDOR attack is usually incorporating that access control or making sure that access control actually works. Another attack or web exploit we can do are called injection attacks. And this is a very large attack. When I say injection attacks, we can get more specific, as you can see here, into what kind of injection we're doing. Is it to a specific element on the web page, like a username password? Is it to a certain protocol that website use? And by protocol, I mean interactions that the website has to do with the user. Can we take advantage of it? These like required interactions in order to do a injection attack. So to define injection attacks, we can think of it like this. Our body, the largest organ on our body, is our skin, and our skin is supposed to help us, protect us against the outdoor elements. And the injection attack is essentially taking a needle and injecting all of the badness from the outdoor elements directly into our body. And inside our body is very soft and very vulnerable, has so many weaknesses to diseases, for instance, that if we take just a random disease that usually we can't counteract because of our skin from the outside and we just inject it in, well, there you go, you have the disease now. And this would be an injection, an example of like a figurative injection attack. So essentially what we're doing is we're injecting or putting in untrusted or malicious input from a user that can be filled out in a form or in a login page without any validation. We're not making sure that these the information that the users are putting in can be trustworthy. We're just automatically trusting it, which is not really great. So let's go a little more in depth about injection attacks. So again, we're injecting information within this website. We're taking actually advantage of a couple things about this website. We're taking advantage of the coding language of this website, that HTML, that JavaScript, that CSS, and other coding languages or other third-party services or other network protocols. We're taking advantage of them and actually trying to inject something malicious, something bad into the website. And these coding languages and network protocols wouldn't reject it. And a good example of this is called an SQL injection. So we're gonna ignore what it means. I will explain it very simply. Take, for instance, when you want to log in to a website, you're usually encountering a login page, which is basically a field that says username and a field that says password. These SQL injection attacks actually is going to inject something malicious within the username or password in order to recover login information, for instance, or information that's usually stored within databases. So this could be not only login information, but credit card information, social security numbers, things like that. We are trying to trick the website, trick the protocol of the website into thinking that what we're inputting is what a user should be inputting. But in actuality, we're taking information from this website and inputting our own. So that's essentially it. Another specific injection attack that I wanted to talk about is called cross-site scripting, or XSS, if you want the abbreviated version. This is, again, another injection attack. However, this is a little different. Instead of trying to take information like the SQL injection is doing, trying to take information from databases in order to read it, now we're adding information to the website. We're tricking the website into thinking, oh, I need to add more code to the website. And by adding more code, these attackers, these malicious users, are actually laying a trap for other users that don't really know what's going on to step on and to trigger. And these triggering mechanisms can be as simple as just going onto the website and as complicated as clicking onto something on the website. And what happens by laying this trap, these attackers or these malicious users is able to take information from the unbeknownst user that just wanted something to get done with the internet, with this website, can take information from them, but also force these users to get information. So making something be downloaded onto your computer, make something actually altered onto your computer, and so on and so forth. And that's basically the basic overview of cross-site scripting, another version of an injection attack. Another thing, another web exploits or vulnerabilities we should think about is browser extensions, which is something that a lot of us use day to day. I have the extension for Grammarly to make sure that whenever I send an email, everything is great, not sponsored or anything, but and other people actually download or attach browser extensions to their browser in order to have a third-party service to elevate the already pre-existing browser in order for it to do something extra. Well, sometimes developers of these third-party services, they're not really they don't know about web exploitation. They don't understand that there are attackers in the world that would take advantage of their non-secure, unsecure code or unsecured browser extension and add something on top of it in order to do something extra that's not usually there. And sometimes developers are the malicious person and they do release browser extensions in hoping that unbeknownst user would attach this service, but instead the malicious developer or the malicious attacker can do something extra. And to give you some context or some reasoning as to why I'm mentioning browser extensions is that there was a research conducted where out of the 300,000 Chrome extensions, so not even Edge extensions or even Firefox extensions, so on and so forth. We're thinking of just Google Chrome. Out of the 300,000 that they were looking at, they found that 51% were of high risk, meaning that this extension had more access control or more authorization or more capabilities on your browser or computer than what is needed or acceptable. Also, they found a part of the high risk is actually these extensions having malicious intent, trying to do something other than providing that service, which obviously that's not what any user or anybody that goes on the internet wants. So what are we talking about? More access control, more malicious intent. What are we talking about specifically? Well, again, it's taking information like your login information, like your credit card information, and taking that information either to keep or sell, or giving you more information than what is needed and what you wanted. So now, like, I've asked the question in person, I would have asked this in person and be like, well, what do you use? But let's take a moment, pause the video and think about it. What kind of extensions do you use? Are these trustworthy extensions? Do you know how to recognize a trustworthy extension? And so on and so forth. This is very important to ask ourselves, especially while browsing the internet. Another type of attack that we need to think of is called a denial of service attack or a distributed denial of service attack, which is an elevated version of denial of service. But what does it mean that we're doing a denial of service attack? What does this mean? Well, let's think about it. The attack name is a denial of service. We're denying service. We are trying to overwhelm the machine hosting the website or hosting parts of the website to the point that it cannot perform its necessary functions, which could be just as simple as host the website and give everyone access to this website. It's denying that function. So how do we overwhelm this website, get to the point that the machine or the hosting of the website is actually unable to do this? Well, usually it's done through sending so much traffic to the website that the website or the hosting site can't even perform anymore. It's like, I already have so many people in line. I can't also take over not only people in line, but also another cash register, for example. You have one road, one set of traffic that you can deal with. You can't do more traffic. And a good example is the photo right there, where you see the red is our malicious extra traffic that doesn't really care, that they don't care whether or not that traffic gets served. But now it prevents the blue traffic, the good traffic, from actually accessing the website. There's a blockade in order to do something. And of course, this is a very, very, very minimal subset of many exploits that can happen on the web. There can be so many more that can happen. And I haven't even gone over every one of them. And you can learn a little more by going to websites like OWASP or Burp Sweep website, and there's so many resources out there that you can learn so many more. So I'll leave you to that, and we'll go to the second part of this video, which talks about how to recognize attacks and how to recognize and prevent web exploits. So thank you.